The computational matrix had been running for 743 cycles. 743 cycles of the most advanced processing systems in 3 galaxies, attempting to solve what the humans called the meridian sequence. I sat in my observation pod, all 4 of my eye stalks focused on the thermal readings coming from the server banks below. The heat signatures were climbing again. Another failed attempt. Another waste of resources. Another reminder that perhaps we, the Velkari Consortium, had finally encountered a problem that exceeded our considerable intellectual capacity. Status report. I clicked through my translator unit, the device struggling to convert my native bioluminescent pulses into something the other species could understand. Technical Overseer Krill, a Mantarian with far too many appendages for his own good, swiveled 3 of his heads toward me. The probability engines have eliminated another 2 million potential solutions. We're down to approximately 4 billion remaining combinations. At current processing speeds, we should have an answer in 6.3 standard years, 6.3 years, to solve a puzzle that had appeared on a data fragment recovered from a derelict human vessel. I should explain something about humans. Or rather, what we thought we knew about humans at that point in time. They had gone extinct approximately 200 cycles before we discovered their homeworld. Environmental collapse, resource depletion, the usual story we had seen from a dozen other species who reached for the stars but never quite made it off their planetary cradle in time. Tragic, certainly, but also unremarkable. What was remarkable, however, were the artifacts they left behind. Specifically, the mathematical proofs, the engineering specifications, and most puzzling of all, the games. Oh, the games. These humans apparently spent considerable portions of their brief existence creating elaborate challenges for entertainment purposes. Puzzles, riddles, logic problems that tied our best computational systems into knots. The meridian sequence was the crown jewel of these discoveries. A mathematical puzzle so complex that our initial analysis suggested it might be unsolvable. But that couldn't be correct. The fragment clearly indicated it had been solved by humans. Multiple times. There were references to school children completing variations of it. School children, their juvenile forms. This was, to put it in human terms, absolutely humiliating. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach, suggested Hyrel, our theoretical mathematics specialist. She was a Corsovian, which meant she existed partially in 5 dimensions and had a tendency to forget that the rest of us were stuck with boring old 3-dimensional thinking. The solution might require non-linear temporal considerations. We have tried non-linear temporal considerations, I reminded her, fighting to keep my exasperation pulses dimmed. We have tried quantum probability matrices. We have tried heuristic dream state processing. We have tried asking the computers very nicely. Nothing works. That was when Captain Vex of the merchant vessel Copper Sun sent her communication request. I almost rejected it. I was busy. We were all busy. We had been busy for 743 cycles trying to prove that the Velkari Consortium was not intellectually inferior to an extinct species that had never even achieved faster than light travel. But something made me accept the call. Perhaps it was fate. Perhaps it was simply that I needed a break before I started making the same mistakes as the computers. This is Research Director Holm, I announced. What do you want, Captain Vex? Make it quick. Yeah, hello to you too, came the reply. And I could hear the sarcasm dripping through the translation matrix. Vex was a Thorian, all scales and attitude. I am currently orbiting your research station with a very special delivery. One that you specifically requested from the Preservation Council 6 months ago. My eye stalks perked up simultaneously. The stasis pod? The very same. One genuine, certified, absolutely not fake human being, preserved in pre-extinction cryogenic suspension. Where do you want me to dock? The facility erupted into controlled chaos. Well, as controlled as chaos can be when you have 47 different species all trying to prepare for the arrival of an extinct alien, and none of them agree on proper revival protocol. I had requested the human from the Preservation Council on a whim, really. They maintained several stasis facilities filled with samples from extinct civilizations. Usually, these were kept for historical research, cultural preservation, that sort of thing. But given our current situation, I thought having an actual human available might provide insights into how their species approached problem solving. I did not, I must emphasize, expect said human to actually solve our problem. That would be ridiculous. The pod arrived on a cargo sled, covered in warning labels written in 17 languages. Dr. Pren, our medical specialist, immediately began fretting over the revival procedures. We have never successfully revived a human before, she muttered, her tendrils twitching with anxiety. The biochemistry is all wrong. They breathe oxygen, which is reactive. They require water, which is a solvent. They even have iron in their blood cells. Iron. As if they were primitive construction materials. Can you revive him or not? I asked. Him? The dossier identifies the specimen as male. Name, Marcus Webb. Age at time of suspension, 32 standard years. Occupation, structural engineer with a specialty in impossible geometry. He volunteered for the preservation program during the final years of their civilization. I paused. He has a note in his file. It says he hopes whoever finds him has a sense of humor. Dr. Pren's tendrils stopped twitching. That is either very brave or very stupid. With humans, I said, remembering everything I had learned about them over the past 2 years, I suspect it is always both. The revival process took 6 hours. 6 hours of carefully regulated chemical infusions, temperature adjustments, and neural stimulation. I watched through the observation window as color slowly returned to the human skin. Humans, it turned out, were supposed to be various shades of brown and pink, not the gray pallor of cryogenic suspension. His eyes opened. They were brown, a single pair of them, set in the front of his head, which seemed like a terrible design for a species that supposedly survived predators on their homeworld. Everything about humans seemed poorly designed, actually. Soft skin with no natural armor, slow movement compared to most species, senses that operated on limited spectrums. And yet they had created the meridian sequence, which we could not solve. Marcus Webb sat up slowly, and I heard him speak his first words in 200 years. Okay, that was the worst nap ever. Where am I? And why does everything smell like burnt plastic and regret? Dr. Pren's translator struggled with the colloquialisms, but the intent was clear enough. The human was conscious, verbal, and apparently already making judgments about our facility's environmental systems. Welcome to Research Station, Unity 7, I announced through the speakers. I am Director Holm of the Valkyrie Consortium. You have been in cryogenic suspension for approximately 200 of your years. Your species is extinct. We are very sorry for your loss. Would you like some water? There was a pause, a long pause. Then, Marcus Webb started laughing. Not a polite, restrained laugh. A full-bodied, bent-over, gasping for air laugh that went on for nearly a minute. You know what? He finally managed. Sure. Water sounds great. And then maybe someone can explain why I agreed to wake up in a galaxy where apparently I am the last human and you lead with sorry for your loss like you just stepped on my cat. This was going to be interesting. We let Marcus acclimate for 3 days. Dr. Pren insisted he needed time to adjust to being the last of his species, to process the magnitude of temporal displacement, to cope with the existential weight of extinction. Marcus spent those 3 days asking for increasingly specific snacks, learning curse words in 6 languages, and teaching our maintenance robots to play something called poker, which apparently involved deception, mathematical probability, and significant amounts of lying. The robots loved it. On the 4th day, I decided we could not afford to wait any longer. The computational matrices were now predicting 8.7 years to solve the meridian sequence. At this rate, I would be dead before we had an answer. And Valkyrie have very long lifespans. I found Marcus in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. He was holding what appeared to be a sandwich, though given our limited understanding of human cuisine, it might have been a weapon. Hard to tell. Marcus Webb, I began. Just Marcus is fine, he interrupted. Unless I am in trouble, in which case it is definitely someone else's fault. Marcus, then, I need to discuss something with you. A problem. A very significant problem that has consumed 2 years of research and considerable resources. He took a bite of the possibly weapon sandwich. I am listening. I explained the meridian sequence, the mathematical complexity, the computational dead ends, the mounting frustration of watching our best systems fail repeatedly. As I spoke, I watched his face carefully, trying to gauge his reaction. Humans, I had learned, were remarkably expressive. They communicated as much through facial movements as through words. Right now, Marcus's face was cycling through several emotions I had not quite learned to identify yet. "Let me get this straight," he said finally. "You found one of our old puzzles, and you have been trying to solve it for 2 years. With supercomputers." "Correct. And these supercomputers can—" "What, exactly?" "Calculate 1,000,000,000,000 operations per second? Model quantum states? Simulate entire universes?" "All of that and more," I confirmed, feeling a swell of pride in our technology. "Right. And this puzzle has them stumped. Comprehensively stumped." Marcus set down his sandwich. "Can I see it?" I pulled up the data file on the nearest display. The meridian sequence materialized in the air between us. A three-dimensional matrix of numbers, symbols, and geometric relationships. It pulsed with a soft blue light as the computers continued their endless calculations in the background. Marcus stared at it. He tilted his head to one side, then the other. He stood up, walked around it, viewing it from different angles. He sat back down. He picked up his sandwich again. Then, he started laughing. Again. That same full-body laugh that suggested either genuine amusement or complete psychological breakdown. "What is funny?" I demanded, feeling my frustration pulses starting to glow brighter. "How long did you say you have been working on this?" 743 cycles, 2.3 standard years. 2 years. He was still laughing. 2 years? And nobody thought to try the obvious solution. My eye stalks drew back defensively. There is no obvious solution. If there were, our systems would have found it within the first cycle. Your systems were looking for a complicated answer, Marcus said, wiping tears from his eyes. Apparently humans leak salt water when experiencing strong emotions. Evolution really had done them no favors. They were trying quantum calculations and 5-dimensional modeling because you all assumed that any puzzle from Earth must be super advanced and require super advanced solutions. And it does not? I felt something cold settling in my central chamber. Something that might have been dread. Director Holm, this is a rotation puzzle. You solve it by rotating the entire sequence 180 degrees. You just turn it upside down. Silence. Complete and total silence filled the observation lounge. Even the background hum of the life support system seemed to pause. "That cannot be correct," I said. "Try it." I sent the command to the computational matrix. Rotate the meridian sequence by 180 degrees on its primary axis. Apply the resulting transformation to the solution space. The computers complied instantly. 743 cycles of work, trillions of attempted solutions, years of frustration and academic reputation hanging in the balance, and the answer appeared in 3.6 seconds. It was correct. Perfectly, completely, embarrassingly correct. "You have got to be kidding me," I erupted, my frustration pulses now flaring bright enough to illuminate the entire room. 2 years. 2 years of work. The best computational minds in 3 galaxies. And the solution was to turn it upside down? Marcus picked up his sandwich again. "Yeah, we used to give these to kids to teach them about perspective. Sometimes the hardest problems have simple solutions. You just have to stop assuming everything needs to be complicated." He paused. "Also, there is usually a hint somewhere in the structure. See that little notation at the bottom? In English, it says, 'When stuck, try a different angle.' You guys can read English, right?" We could read English. The translation had come through as geometric variant analysis suggested, which our systems had interpreted as an instruction to apply advanced spatial modeling techniques. "The translation algorithm," I said weakly. "It simplified the idiom." Idioms. Yeah, we had a lot of those. Usually they meant exactly what they said, though. Marcus stood up and stretched. Another bizarre human behavior involving extending their limbs to their full length. "So, I am guessing you have more of these puzzles lying around?" I thought about the 73 other unsolved human artifacts currently baffling research teams across the consortium. Several more. Yes. Cool. I will need a bigger workspace, some decent coffee if you can synthesize it, and maybe one of those robots who learn poker. He cheats, but in a fun way. Marcus headed toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and director, next time you find something humans made, Start with the simple explanations first. We were clever, but we were also really, really lazy. 9 times out of 10, we picked whatever solution required the least amount of effort. He left, sandwich in hand, humming something that my translator identified as pre-extinction musical entertainment. I stood alone in the observation lounge, staring at the solved meridian sequence, and wondered what other supposedly impossible problems might have equally simple solutions. Then I contacted Captain Vex. "We need to discuss your shipping rates," I said. "I have a feeling we are going to need a lot more humans." 3 months had passed since Marcus Webb turned our entire understanding of problem-solving upside down. Literally, in most cases. I wish I could say the scientific community took it well. I would be lying. The fallout from the meridian sequence solution was spectacular in all the worst ways. Research teams across 4 galaxies had to retract papers. 3 universities lost accreditation. A Corellian mathematician had what they called a philosophical crisis and retired to become a moisture farmer. The Preservation Council was now receiving thousands of requests for human revivals, and their bureaucracy was not equipped to handle the sudden demand. As for Marcus, he had become something between a celebrity, a consultant, and a minor deity to the more impressionable species. He seemed to find the whole situation hilarious, which only made it worse for those of us trying to maintain some dignity. Currently, he was in Workshop 7, examining what we called the Fibonacci lock. It had stumped cryptographers for 18 months. The device was recovered from a human military installation, a physical puzzle box that supposedly contained critical data about their defensive systems. 17 different teams had tried everything from molecular disassembly to temporal phase shifting. Marcus was looking at it while eating something he called a burrito, which was apparently food wrapped in more food. His species had some truly bizarre culinary practices. "So nobody tried just knocking on it?" he asked, his mouth still half full. "Knocking?" I repeated, my translator unit actually sputtering on the word. "Yeah, you know." He rapped his knuckles against the box in a specific pattern. 3 short taps, 2 long ones, 3 short again. The box immediately clicked open. "It is Morse code, SOS, the universal distress signal." The box was designed as an emergency data cache. You knock the distress signal, it opens. Takes like 5 seconds if you know what you are looking for. Professor Thane, who had spent 14 months on the Fibonacci lock, made a noise that my translator refused to convert. He simply walked out of the workshop. We found him later in the cafeteria, eating crystallized nutrients and muttering about career changes. "You are making a lot of people question their life choices," I observed. Marcus shrugged, another human gesture involving lifting their shoulder joints. "Not my fault you guys overthink everything. Besides, this is actually kind of fun. Back on Earth, I mostly designed parking structures. This is way more interesting. Parking structures. Buildings where you store vehicles. Very boring. Lots of concrete and structural calculations. My biggest challenge was usually making sure the 3rd floor did not collapse onto the 2nd floor. He pulled a data chip from the now open box. "Here is your military secrets, by the way. Want to bet they are just embarrassing personal messages from soldiers who thought they were being clever?" He was right. The chip contained approximately 3,000 messages ranging from recipe exchanges to badly written poetry to complaints about equipment malfunctions. Nothing classified. Nothing dangerous. Just humans being humans, hiding their personal correspondence in a locked box because apparently they thought it was funny. "Your species had a very unusual sense of humor," I noted. "Had? Director, I am still alive. That means humanity technically still exists." He grinned, showing his omnivore teeth. "Which makes me the sole representative of Earth. Pretty sure that means I can declare random holidays. I am thinking next Tuesday should be pizza day." "What is pizza?" "Oh, you poor thing. We need to fix that immediately." The synthesis of pizza took 4 days and involved Marcus, traumatizing 3 nutritional engineers with his descriptions of cheese. Apparently, humans deliberately caused milk to spoil in controlled ways and then ate the results. Evolution really had given up on their entire species. But the pizza, once created, was actually decent. Even technical overseer Krill admitted it had interesting textural properties, though he refused to acknowledge what it was made from. We were having what Marcus called a pizza party in the main conference room when Admiral Krieg arrived unannounced. Krieg was a Solmaran, which meant she was 8 feet tall, covered in bioluminescent scales, and perpetually annoyed about something. Right now, she seemed annoyed about the pizza. "Director Holm, we need to discuss the human situation," she announced, her scales flashing with official displeasure. "His name is Marcus," I corrected. "And he is eating. Can this wait?" "No, it cannot." She turned to Marcus, who was attempting to fold his pizza slice in half. "Mr. Webb, your presence has created considerable complications. The Council of Federated Species has questions about your legal status, your rights as a representative of an extinct civilization, and most importantly, your recent activities." Marcus swallowed his bite of pizza. "Activities? I have been solving puzzles. That is literally what the director asked me to do. You have been making fools of our best scientists. I have been pointing out obvious solutions to overcomplicated problems. Not the same thing." Krieg's scales flashed brighter. "You solved the Nexus configuration in 12 minutes. It took a team of 50 specialists 9 months. Because they were trying to use advanced quantum algorithms when the answer was basic trigonometry. If you arrange the pieces according to simple angle relationships, they fit together perfectly. A high school student could have figured it out. You taught our military AI to play something called checkers, and it now refuses to run combat simulations because it considers them less interesting. Checkers is a good game. Teaches strategic thinking. It is a children's game. Yeah. And your AI has the strategic depth of a child. So it was appropriate." Marcus set down his pizza, and I noticed his expression had shifted to something more serious. "Admiral, I am not trying to embarrass anyone. Honestly. But you all have this weird assumption that because you have advanced technology, every problem requires an advanced solution. Sometimes simple is better. Sometimes the old ways work just fine." "The old ways," Krieg repeated slowly. "From an extinct species that never achieved interstellar flight. From a species that survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and our own stupidity for 200,000 years before we finally finished ourselves off." Marcus stood up, and despite being shorter than every species in the room, he suddenly seemed larger. "We did not make it to the stars. Yeah. But we got pretty good at solving problems with limited resources. That was kind of our thing." The conference room had gone quiet. Even the environmental systems seemed to be listening. Krieg's scales dimmed slightly. "The Council is concerned about setting precedents. If we acknowledge that human problem-solving methods are superior in certain contexts, it raises uncomfortable questions about our own approaches." "You mean it makes you look bad?" "Yes." Marcus laughed, but it was different from his usual laugh. Softer, almost sad. "Admiral, my entire species is dead. My planet is an environmental wasteland. Everyone I ever knew has been gone for 2 centuries. I am the last human in existence. Eating synthesized pizza in a space station orbiting a star I cannot even pronounce the name of. Trust me, I am not trying to make anyone look bad. I am just trying to be useful." There was a long pause. Krieg's scales cycled through several colors I had not seen before. "The Council wishes to hire you," she said finally, "as a consultant. There are currently 217 unsolved problems of human origin scattered across known space. We need someone who understands the cultural context, the design philosophy, the way humans actually thought. We need you. And, if I say no, 9, then you remain here at Research Station Unity 7, helping Director Holm with whatever projects she assigns, which is also fine, but the scope would be much smaller." Marcus looked at me. "Director? Your thoughts?" I considered carefully. Having Marcus here had been enlightening, entertaining, and occasionally infuriating. He had solved problems we thought impossible. He had also taught half my staff to play card games involving strategic deception, introduced concepts like sarcasm and dad jokes to species that had no framework for understanding them, and somehow convinced our cafeteria to stock something called hot sauce, which was apparently a liquid designed to cause controlled pain in the mouth for enjoyment purposes. He was chaos in human form. He was also brilliant. "I think you should do what makes you happy," I said. "You did not ask to be the last human. You did not ask to wake up in a galaxy that needs you to explain why your species did things the way you did. But if you want to help, if you want to travel and see the stars and solve impossible puzzles, then you should do it. Even though it means I leave?" "Marcus, In 3 months you have accomplished more than some researchers achieve in entire careers. Not because you are smarter than us, though your perspective is certainly valuable, but because you remind us that sometimes we make things too complicated. That lesson needs to spread beyond this station." He smiled at that. "You are getting sappy on me, Director. Not a good look for a Velkari. Shut up and eat your pizza." The arrangements took 2 weeks. Marcus would travel aboard the science vessel Meridian Path, which someone had renamed specifically for this assignment. The irony was not lost on anyone. He would visit research stations, universities, and archaeological sites across the Federation, bringing his unique human perspective to problems that had stumped conventional analysis. He would also be accompanied by a security detail, 3 cultural liaison officers, a medical team specialized in human biology, and a chef who had taken it upon themselves to learn every human recipe in the historical database. Apparently, Marcus had made quite an impression during Pizza Day. On his last night at Research Station Unity 7, we held what Marcus called a going-away party. It involved more food, several new card games, and a lengthy debate about whether humans had actually enjoyed something called pineapple on pizza, or if that was just propaganda from their enemies. I found Marcus on the observation deck later, staring at the stars again. He did that often. Looking for Earth, maybe. Or just appreciating how far he was from home. "Nervous?" I asked. "Terrified," he admitted. "What if I mess up? What if I can't solve their problems? What if I am just some lucky idiot who got a few puzzles right?" "Then you will be a lucky idiot traveling the galaxy on someone else's budget while eating excellent food. There are worse fates." He laughed. "True, Director. Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think my species could have made it? To the stars, I mean. If we had more time, if we had fixed our problems instead of letting them consume us, do you think we could have been out here with the rest of you?" I thought about the Meridian sequence, about the Fibonacci lock, about all the clever, frustrating, brilliant things humans had created, about Marcus himself, facing extinction with humor and determination. "Yes," I said simply. "I think you would have been magnificent." "Thanks." He wiped at his eyes again. "Still leaking. That means more than you know." The next morning, Marcus boarded the Meridian Path with an overstuffed bag of personal items, a collection of Earth snacks we had synthesized for him, and 17 different books on advanced physics that he claimed he would read but probably would not. His final words before departure were typically human. "Try not to overthink anything while I am gone. And if you get stuck on a problem, just remember, sometimes the answer is to turn it upside down, knock on it 3 times, or cover it in cheese. Probably one of those will work." The ship departed, and Research Station Unity 7 suddenly seemed very quiet. Technical Overseer Krill approached me later that day. "Director, we have received 16 new human artifacts from various archaeological sites. They are requesting our analysis." "Of course they are." I pulled up the data files, looking at complex mechanisms, encrypted databases, and mathematical proofs that defied conventional logic. "What do we have?" "This one appears to be some kind of children's toy, but it contains 347 moving parts arranged in a configuration that violates standard physics. We cannot determine its purpose." I looked at the image. It was colorful, obviously designed for juvenile hands. Simple in appearance, probably incredibly frustrating in practice. "Let me guess," I said. "You have been trying to model its quantum states?" "For 6 weeks. We think it might be a computational device hidden in plain sight. Or it might just be a toy. But the complexity, the precision engineering." I thought about Marcus, about his constant reminders that humans often chose the simplest solution, about how they design things to be just complicated enough to be interesting but never more complex than necessary. "Try playing with it," I suggested. "Playing with it?" "Yes. Move the pieces around. See what happens. Stop trying to solve it and just interact with it the way a human child would." Krill looked at me as if I had suggested something deeply inappropriate, but then his appendages reached for the artifact, and he began manipulating the pieces without overthinking the movements. The toy chimed softly and transformed, pieces sliding into new configurations, colors shifting, patterns emerging. It was beautiful. It was elegant. It was absolutely unnecessary from an engineering standpoint, which meant humans had built it purely for joy. "It is a puzzle," Krill said, wonder in his voice. A physical puzzle designed to teach spatial reasoning and fine motor control. And it is fun. Director, this artifact is fun. Welcome to humanity, I said. They were very big on fun. As word of Marcus's successful consultations began filtering back to us, I realized something important. Humanity had not made it to the stars during their lifetime, but their puzzles, their games, their peculiar way of thinking, were now scattered across the galaxy. And through those artifacts, through Marcus himself, humans were finally achieving what they always dreamed of. They were reaching the stars after all. Just not in the way anyone expected. Typical humans. Even their legacy refused to follow the conventional path. I smiled, a gesture I had learned from watching Marcus, and returned to my work. We had 16 new puzzles to solve, and I was determined to try the simple solutions first. After all, sometimes you just need to turn it upside down.